Yeah, light and breezy. Yeah, no more than 20 minutes. Yeah, like just 20 minutes.
Just
That's
tops, absolute 20 minutes tops.
Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm joined by Sam Williams.
Greetings.
And Bruce Fitzpatrick.
Good evening.
How are we?
Got the full squad on.
Well, thanks.
This is how rusty we are.
How have you two been keeping in the last 6 weeks or so since we had all three of us on? I think it was the Ryder Cup, wasn't it, when we last had the three of us?
Yeah.
You know,
It was a very, very long time ago.
shooting the breeze.
But I think, to be honest, since then, there's not really been much professional golf worth talking about, if I'm perfectly honest. There's just been a sort of some half events out in the US, and we've been sort of climaxing here in the European Tour, or the DP World Tour, as it's now called. But
Oh, hang on. No, that's not correct. That's not correct. It's from next season, isn't it? So let's just, yeah.
No, I'm going to correct you there. I think it is the DP World Tour Championship that's happening
That's what
next
we're
weekend.
playing
So
now.
it has been rebranded, Bruce. But we will come on to it. We will come on to it.
Don't want to go down the rabbit hole yet, do it.
What I would say about that is it does feel like a long time since we've potted together live. But my God, isn't September and October just a ridiculous month or two in the diary for golf? Like, it's just crazy. I feel like...
what, busy?
It has been hectic as hell. I think
What have you been doing?
September is significantly busier in my experience than the summer. Would you not agree, Bruce?
Yeah, I think they're great golfing months in the UK, aren't they? I mean, we're conscious that a lot of courses, the greens really play at their best, I think, in September when they've had a kind of summer of growth, and but they're not quite getting maybe scorched as much as they are in the height of the summer. So maybe one of our many agronomists or greenkeeping experts could just tell me why that is, that most UK golf courses seem to have better greens in September time. But yeah, a lot of great autumn golf to be played. I guess everyone's got one eye on the fact that the clocks are going back in October. So they want to, get those sort of afternoon rounds in while they still can. And I mean, just speaking on behalf of the Jar as a whole, not that I've really been partaking in many of these trips, having started working life in earnest down in London, but you guys had a brilliant trip to Northern Ireland. Sam, you then backed it up with a trip to Valderrama. So yeah,
and we had the
definitely
not
been
closing
hectic.
party.
Of
We had the not
course.
closing party, didn't we? And I seem to remember at the early part of September as well, me and Tom did an absolute blockbusting trip around Surrey as well. So there's been a lot of golf.
And in September, we did Woodall, Bruce.
Yeah.
Was that in
Anyways,
September? Yeah.
Yeah.
reeling off these
And we've just done New
tracks.
Zealand. So yeah, I suppose we've been quite busy.
We've been very fortunate, I think it's fair to say. I can't remember a glut of golf. I mean, we obviously had a lot of stuff in Scotland in the early part of the year, but the glut of golf in September and October was just simply ridiculous. And also there's just been a load of matches. I'm sure the people that are members of clubs in the UK, there's a lot of club matches because people are back at school or kids are back at school anyway, and the summer holidays are kind of at an end. But anyway, well, enough of us trying to make excuses for a little bit of a dampener on the number of pods, but I mean, the not closing party took a heap of effort, and I think took the eye off the pod for a week or two there. So
there might be some listeners that don't know what the not closing party is, Sam.
Since it was your baby, Sam, I think you're the one who needs to sort of give it the full run through.
We'll put it to bed after this one then. So we mentioned it, I think, briefly on the Jeff Shack pod, but essentially in Ibiza every year there's closing parties, aren't there? So I just had this idea that you could have a sort of a music-themed closing party for the end of season golfing, which would happen in October. And we'd have it at Cleve Hill, but because Cleve Hill didn't close and stayed open, we would have a not closing party. And, it was just amazing. It was kind of exactly the same feeling from the June day where it's just so nice bringing together people from different parts of the world, all of them who are probably tapping out message to each other on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And, you know, people just sort of connecting with other like-minded souls. And then hearing back, you know, the number of games people sort of, I'm going up to see so-and-so over here and stuff. It really is remarkable. I just thought it was a really good, fun day and a nice way to end what's been a pretty good season. So, yeah, I thought the music was a little bit, I mean, it was certainly loud on the first tee. We got that piping down the fairways, music and on the way round. And
how many requests have you had for that 80s playlist? I mean, I never really had you down as someone who had a wide music palette, Sam, given that on the long car journeys to Scotland.
Rock, didn't you?
I thought it was all just American Pie, sort of college rock. But
it's college prog rock or film scores if it comes from Sam Williams.
Well, if you go in and type into Spotify the Not Closing Party, you will get access to a Spotify playlist that'll give you everything that
DJ SJW's.
It's Bruce Springsteen, Hall and Oates.
Which brings us on to our official unofficial for the week. Spotify. Thank you, Spotify, for offering your services up free of charge. If you listen to an advert, it sounds great. And you can get the Not Closing Party for free.
There you go.
Straight into your ears.
So yeah, and I think in that time
it was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an incredible day, and it would be remiss not to say that Bruce won his own golf day.
Can we talk about your ability as
moving swiftly
a host? No. I need to stay on this for a few more moments. Okay. Your ability as a host, Sam. So for those who don't know, when we did the original mixer, I was like, well, you boys crack on, play golf. I'll do some bits and bobs around. And we did it at our home course and I went round and it was fine. The logistics at Cleve Hill was slightly different, whereas it's so sprawling and massive that you kind of got to go to the first point, stay there for a while, go to the second point, stay there for a while. But where you set up shop tended to be where the bar was. So by the end of the day...
Yeah, so I was doing we had two sort of drink stops around the course, and you know how you play in corporate days, you'll have like a beat the pro, so the pro will just sit on a par 3 tee and just keep firing 7 irons at the flag, and you've got to get it closer. I felt like that was kind of what I was doing with a bottle of Moretti in my hand, just essentially chopping a beer with anyone that would come through. Which, yeah, I mean, that left me rather tired by the time we got to about 9-10 o'clock in the evening. But it was
fire pits and all sorts.
You know, it was an outstanding day. It was really good. And I will add that signed up as country members to Cleve, being in the Midlands and being kind of not too far from there, I think, you know, amazing what they've put together in terms of a country membership package there. So, I mean, an old Tom course, Mackenzie did some sort of redesign work there. I think some of the holes are absolute bangers. And yeah, I mean, £200 to play there a year is just absolutely fantastic. And I just a nice way, I think, for us to kind of support the work that Nick and Sam and the guys there are doing with it. So, but yeah, no, it was really cool. Really good.
Ditto. Yeah.
It was very, very good, wasn't it? We well done, Sam.
Well done, Sam. I think we had it was a good team effort from all that came in and supported it. Now, there's a little bit of golf news that's happened in the last few weeks.
There's been a fair bit of golf news, but we've just been
too much, and it's kind of, well, you know, there's just been a lot going on, isn't there? I feel like the natural starting point here is probably the DP World Tour rather than the Saudi Golf League stuff, because a bit more timely going into the World Tour Championship next week. I don't know about you guys. Do you feel like we're maybe at a point, and we kind of touched on this with Jeff Shack earlier in the week, we could almost start to see a total glut of events now in UAE. Does it feel like, I don't know, money's just totally taken over here, isn't it?
I've got an opinion on this, and it's part of the reason for me that we've not podded a lot recently is that I feel like certainly since since COVID, there's just too much golf, and it's too thinly spread for me. You know, there's just not enough. I would prefer if they said we've got 30 weeks of golf and this is what is, just go watch that and enjoy it, and then all the best in the world are going to be there. But this, like what I'm seeing at the moment, I turn on any Wednesday to Sunday, you turn on the TV and there's golf, and it could be anywhere and it's live. But it's, for me, it's just, it's too thin. It's too. You get the odd good player in them. I'm just not getting engaged. And for me personally, I feel like if whatever comes out, the Saudi Golf League, the Premier Golf League, the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, whatever comes out, I personally feel like it needs to be condensed slightly. Now, having said that, sorry, I'm monologuing. One of the remits of the DP World Tour is they're going to have 47 events with a minimum $2 million purse, but 47 events.
Yeah, it's an
there's
awful lot.
player fatigue, isn't there? There's clearly a massive amount. I mean, you can see Rahm. Rahm's obviously not playing next week in the Tour Championship final. You can't really blame the guy.
No.
He's won it a couple of years. In the past, I think he won it 2019. Might have been the last time he won it. He's had a monster year. US Open win. Top point scorer, Ryder Cup. Probably wasn't hard in Team Europe, but. These guys are just totally fatigued, and there's and the Saudi Golf League stuff, or the PGL, whatever happens, it's not going to reduce the number of events.
No, but also I think that they're clearly like, what's the purse for the Tour Championship now? Is $8 million?
$9 million dollars,
euros.
I believe. Maybe not you. I think it's $9 million dollars.
Rahm. That's clearly not an incentive enough for him to come over and do it. And I don't think moving forward that it's going to be just lobbing cash at the situation is going to solve it. I just think, for me, something needs to change just a little bit. I don't know. What do you think, Bruce?
I don't think it's just a uniquely European problem, though. I mean, to be completely honest, you look at even the PGA Tour, it just feels that after the Ryder Cup, there is a gentle kind of wind down. People are sort of resetting. And yeah, maybe that's dictated by the timing of the playoffs and the PGA Tour season. But I mean, take the Bermuda Championship a couple of weeks ago that Lucas, as Sam, I think maybe said in the first podcast, Lucas Ebel, that tournament,
Lucas Ebel.
That's like a full status PGA Tour event with a really good, decent prize fund as far as I can gather, and there just weren't many people who wanted to play in it. Like they went down to however many reserves just trying to get people to play in it. And I think that was partly governed by the fact that Bermuda had a fairly stringent sort of COVID admittance policy, but I also think it just speaks to the fact that a lot of players, particularly the best players in the world, where they are paid so much money, they just want some time off, 6, 7, 8 weeks off, probably in the case of someone, like a Rory McIlroy. In fact, just circling back on our earlier comments about not having talked about loads. I mean, he notched up another win this year out in Vegas at the CJ Cup, and again, it just feels like even with Rory winning, not loads of people are talking about it. It's just there's just a general kind of apathy or lack of enthusiasm around golf at this time of year, because it's like, well, what are you really building towards? There's no major on the horizon. There's no Ryder Cup or FedEx Cup sort of finale on the horizon. It just, I think to me and a lot of other people, golf is almost just seen as you're always sort of gravitating towards the next big event, the next major, or the Ryder Cup or the end of season, and the European Tour probably suffers as a result of that.
Yeah, I think also as a viewer of professional golf in winter in the UK, there is never more of a disconnect between what you're watching on TV and what you're doing than in winter. You're watching these guys in Saudi or in Vegas or Florida or something where they're playing in the sunshine T-shirts, and you're like, oh, this is the sport that I like to play on the weekend. And you go out on the weekend and it's like pick and place, trudge through this, freezing cold, 6 layers. It's just like they're so different. I think that it's like, oh, this is not what I play.
I could connect to it though. I could definitely connect to it now. I think maybe what a lot of people are experiencing though is that there's spectator fatigue, there's player fatigue kicking in. I think if there was major around the corner, if we were really getting into the season, it happens to be in the winter. The fact that it's in direct opposition to the weather we have here, I'm not sure that, but we've just had so much great golf to watch, haven't we? We've had how many majors in the last 12 months? 6. I mean, we had they packed them in, didn't they? So we had more than our fair share. We had the Ryder Cup. We've had all of that stuff going on, and I don't know, maybe maybe I'm sure the kind of governing bodies, the PGA, will have known we were going to probably hit this point now where these deals are going to start coming on the table and things are going to start happening. But it does feel like we're at a crossroads with it where, something's going to have to happen here. We're going to see player fields split massively. If things like Saudi Golf League get off the ground and they start to come good on some of the talks of the players that they're supposedly in discussions with, then all of a sudden the PGA becomes a slightly diluted proposition. Then that starts to look different. So maybe that will just thin it out even more. Like it's already a little bit thin, isn't it?
Yeah.
You got someone like Martin Traynor in the mix, tonight going into the last round. And, he's statistically been one of the worst performing players on tour for the last 18 months.
It's also looking like, I think as we record this, there's a tiny, probably 3 or 4 holes left of that tournament. But that's looking like it's going to be I have to get this right, Ryan, the highest winning score in many, many moons. As in, he's 9 under the last time I checked, and usually it's much, much more lower.
Yeah. And I think it's just symptomatic. It seems like we're on the same page here. There's not really much of a sense of flow to this part of the year, or a sense of like what you kind of building towards. And actually, I think back to maybe 2015 and prior to that, I can remember sitting down and watching the last few events of the European Tour season because it's like, yeah, Rory was going to go back to Dubai and he was going to go and have a crack there, and Tommy Fleetwood and Molinari, even in sort of 2018, I think there was a bit of a race going on too. But having the DP World Tour Championship, whatever it's called, a full 8-9 weeks after the conclusion of the American season, and with the fact that, COVID has really just accelerated the fact that there's a huge gulf between these two events, and the just really the strength of field. I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. It's like the strength of field at PGA Tour events in the peak season is just so much different to that in the European Tour events. That's just causing us to totally lose interest in the golf that's being played this time of year, because there's not really much going on in America. And even though it's the headline event on the European Tour, because it's had fairly weak fields all year, there's just not loads to get excited around. That's how I feel, at least.
Having said that, though, Rory is going to be at the DP World Championship, so that is something to look forward to. There should be a fairly strong field there. There's something to be said about the rankings a little bit. If you want to go into it, perhaps you don't. But the top 2 on the race to Dubai is Colin Morikawa and Billy Horschel. Now I know Billy came across for. What event was that he played?
Wentworth. Fully ingratiated himself with the West Ham United supporters, I believe.
He also played the Dunhill. He also played the Dunhill.
BMW, wasn't it?
Yeah, he supported us.
But he hasn't played a phenomenal amount of golf on the European Tour. Not like a European Tour stalwart would play. But he's second. Colin, obviously, with the Open is top. But there seems to be some fairly funky weightings that if you come and do something, Will Zalatoris, for instance, is 11th on the race to Dubai.
Yeah. What is going on there?
That's absolutely outrageous, isn't it?
It's funky, isn't it?
The ones that are the European Tour stalwarts that you really want to you're rooting for, Richard Bland. Outrageous,
yeah.
8th position. It's like, that's absolutely unbelievable where he's come from and the year he's had. That would be I don't know, calling it a Cinderella story might be seen as a little bit harsh, but, it really is impressive if he was to come good. It might be a little bit too far back, but, those top 3 names you mentioned there, Tom, Morikawa, Horschel, Rahm, they have between them 28 European Tour starts. Now, Bland's notched up 22 on his own,
Right.
And bearing in mind, that is capturing the headline Rolex series within there, because they'll be playing things like the Scottish, they'll be playing things like the Open, obviously.
So let's just zero in a little bit on next week. You've already mentioned Rahm's not even turning up, which is tough. Horschel and Morikawa,
understandable. New father. Yeah, let's cut him some slack here.
Yeah, it's just I don't disagree with what you said, but it's just tough, isn't it, from the tournament organisers' perspective? Morikawa and Horschel, are they arriving?
Believe so.
believe so. I think
Believe so.
Rory is as well. So it should be something to look forward to.
Yeah. I think from that perspective,
I'm excited.
But again, I think it's strength of field, isn't it? It's like, okay, strength of field. We've got a major winner from this year, and arguably one of the standout performers of the Ryder Cup team. Horschel is kind of trending in the right direction, and Rory's Rory. So yeah, people will get around the TV screens and watch it.
And we're going to be rooting for Bland. We're all going to be rooting for Bland. I'm sure.
Bob Maxey is your favourite in the world.
Yeah, we've gone off him a little bit. It seems to be doing a huge amount, has it? It's been a quieter season. I've gone off him a little bit recently. I think
he didn't reply to your request to come on the podcast. And I mean, they say never meet your heroes, and Sam's not even been afforded that opportunity to meet him. So I think that's really just left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth.
But there's players like Bob Mack where you feel like this has maybe been a year of adjustment. Like he's stepped up massively in terms of the type of events he's playing. A lot more PGA Tour starts, playing in America. Probably been a bit tricky for him this year in terms of making that adjustment. But yeah, I'm a massive fan of Bob Mack. You know that. It'd be really good to see Richard Bland have a great week.
Yeah,
I just think that would be. I think the other thing I wanted to mention about DP World Tour is obviously the massive uplift in the just the overall prize fund. So I think it was spun in quite a strange way because they basically kept stripping out things like the Rolex Series events and then putting them back in to suit their promotional material. So it was like, if you take out the Rolex Series events, it was like $110 million. You bolt those back in, it's like another 30 million, and that gets them to the magic 200 million prize fund. But it's a massive uplift in terms of the cash they're playing for. And I think that extends well down throughout the European Tour, or what we would previously refer to as the European Tour. So things like Challenge Tour events are going to have a lot more money going with them. That's kind of where I feel like the money needs to go in the game. I think that top 50 in the world level, particularly when we're looking at...
They're okay.
Yeah, they're fine, aren't they?
Okay.
So you're going to get, Saudi Golf League, you're going to get some, people who are in the twilight of their career who are quite happy to take $30 million to go and play, some high profile events. But actually it's the guys that are... maybe that buys them one more year on the Challenge Tour to try and really make it. Or maybe that's the difference, in terms of whether or not they can double down on that as a full-time career, or maybe it's an early exit from the professional ranks. And I think that's a good thing. So I look at it and think, from that point of view, that's a good tick, because that's where the money needs to be spent. The bit in the back of my mind, which I mentioned at the top of this, which was the number of events out in the Middle East, just feels like it's totally at odds with all the other kind of rhetoric around the game. Mainly is sustainability. One, Like I honestly don't understand how putting these courses on the map as like they are, they're absolutely anti-sustainable.
Can I just add to that? Not only is it like sustainability, but you like see these tracks out in like Dubai that they can only play under floodlights. You're like, well, there's your carbon footprint, lads. You're just firing out lights just so you can play golf in an area that you can't actually grow grass. It's
outrageous.
Ridiculous.
It's remarkable. Yeah. So I think that's a factor. I think there's obviously the whole Saudi thing, which probably doesn't need a huge amount of explanation as well, which I think that's just difficult optically. And then I think the third and the biggest thing is, like, I've watched those events and I've enjoyed watching them occasionally, but never once have I had any interest in playing golf in the Middle East. And I just think it's a really bad advert for what golf should look like. No, they all look the same. Like,
no, come on. At some point, someone's going to come in and say, "Oh, you guys on Instagram? Do you want to go across to Dubai and do some filming
Absolutely,
out there?" Oh yeah, that'd be great.
I've been out there. I've been out there.
On the record,
I
have no interest in playing them.
Okay, but look, I think the golf out there is good and it's interesting. It's fun. I mean, when you're stuck in sort of rainy, cold England in November, okay, we've actually had quite a nice day today, so not the best time to be talking about it. Fairly pleasant, but yeah, let's face it, golf in England in sort of November, December through till even March time can be a little bit bleak and a bit grim, and it's not that dependable across Europe. So yeah, it makes sense that the European Tour goes out to Dubai, to the Middle East, just generally to go and play golf out there, because it is a very good winter golfing destination. Having said that, and having enjoyed playing a few rounds out in Dubai, back in 2018. That's the only time I've been out there. I totally echo all your sentiments in that it is absolutely anti-sustainable and flies in the face of a lot of the rhetoric that's being made about, we've just had the COP26 conference, obviously in Glasgow, and not to talk too much about politics and bring that into a golf podcast. But yeah, it does not look good as an advert for golf's sort of sustainable future. Added to which, you throw in the questionable human rights records, not of just the main sort of culprits like Saudi Arabia, but also somewhere like the UAE. It just, it doesn't look great, does it? And I think if the governing bodies or the tours are able to come out and say, look, if you want to see these events, you want to see the best players in the world, you want the whole advertising circus that goes along with it and the media circus that makes it into a real spectacle, we do have to get into bed with some slightly unsavory actors. That would be fine. But I just think people get sick of the sort of the contradictions, in terms of let's make golf more accessible, let's make it available to all, let's, bring it up to speed and stop it being such a stuffy kind of closed shop elitist sport. That's all fairly positive, but then don't turn around and, do things that are completely inimical to that message.
God, there's some long words in there.
I want to ask a question. So before we went on tonight, just shove something up and just any questions and stuff. You always good stuff comes through. Mark Edwards sent a question in, and I think it goes on for this. I'm interested in your take. What pro golf should look like in 5 or 10 years' time versus what will probably happen? Where's your kind of head out on that? Let's just simplify it. 5 years' time, where do you think it'll look?
I think it will look exactly the same as it does now. I think you're
going to hit a ceiling. You think we're close to hitting a ceiling with it?
I think the PGA Tour will be stronger than it is at the moment. I think that the Saudi Golf League and the Premier Golf League will try and fail and only empower the PGA Tour to do whatever it wants to do and pay whatever it wants to pay, and it's completely in control of everything. I mean, essentially, I'm not obviously a pro or an expert in any of these things, but they took a decent chunk out of the European Tour. Is that right? In terms of their stake in it?
Controlling a significant share. They've got a seat on the board, though.
They've got a seat on the board for the European Tour.
70% stake.
And now it's the DP World Tour taking in, so whether the European Tour would have done that anyway, if not for the involvement of the PGA Tour, don't know. That's where I think it will be pessimistically. What I'd like it to be, I think I'd like something with like I've said earlier on, with a condensed season. I'd like something with more team golf, personally. Something playing for more than just money. Something for
venues.
More than... I think I'd like to see more in Australasia. I think I'd love to see some Australian golf on TV more. Some of the golf in Japan, I'd like to see that on TV. Just globalize it a little bit more, but condense the season for me personally.
I tell you what, I sort of echo those sentiments, really. I think I wouldn't have an issue with a kind of global tour. So for me, I'm a little bit nostalgic about names like the European Tour and how you sort of equate the European Tour with Monty and Seve and Faldo and all these great players over the years. And the fact that we're moving away from that, I am a little bit sad about it. But I think if we were able to establish a world tour, and if the PGA can facilitate that by taking a stake in the European Tour and there being greater collaboration and having, maybe as Tom says, maybe it's like 30 weeks that are just, top tier world-class events that attract the best fields, and the schedule isn't so tiring that the best players in the world are kind of sort of deterred from traveling a lot and they feel like they're sort of on the road all the time. But actually you have real high class fields at brilliant venues. There's a mixture of the kind of regulars on the PGA Tour, but also going out to say the Sandbelt and doing maybe a couple of events at the Sandbelt in Australia or an event in Japan as well. You could maybe make that work with sort of the travel and time zone arrangements and doing a swing through there. But then also, initiatives like the sort of Genesis Scottish Open, getting some of the best players in the world to come and play sort of Scottish links courses. Again, right around the time of the Open. If you think it through and there's collaboration, you can make the schedules work. I don't see why we can't have a more interesting set of courses that the best in the world are playing on. And as for the sort of feeder tours, which are sort of the lifeblood of the game and allow these great young professionals to, climb through the ranks and then eventually take that next step and get into the top 50 of the world and start competing for the biggest prizes in our sport. Well, yeah, there's no real issue with having regional feeder tours that do have a lot of events and are offering people the chance to compete regularly and cut their teeth and earn money and then try and graduate to the next level. So I'm all in favor of a more condensed top tier schedule at different courses that are a bit more interesting architecturally and have a bit more history. But then for the sort of feeder tours, keep them strong, keep them regular, and grow the game that way, or grow the game at the professional ranks that way.
What do you think, Sam?
I take exception with the format. So I think one of the biggest bugbears for me with professional golf is the format. There's just a total and utter over-reliance on 72-hole stroke play. That's really hard for the viewer. So I think that's that. I'd make that sort of point one as things where it should go would be going away from that, and what that looks like exactly, I don't know. But I do think there's far too much stock being put in this F1 style Netflix series that we can expect to see at our screens, because we've seen a very successful F1 documentary that helps paint the stories on behind the pit lane and stuff. Right. And people are starting to think, well, that's just going to be the silver bullet for golf, and I just don't think that's the case. It's an engaging sport to watch, but only at times. And 4 days of stroke play, that for me would be something to fix. Do I think that will be remedied as part of anything that's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years? Yeah, I actually do think that's an option. We've seen it in cricket. And then there's the location would be for me second point, where I'd be like, yeah, that's another issue. Like, I think things look really similar. I think the look and feel of events, and you can tell when they go and do things like the West Coast swing, you get a nice feeling of variety. It's actually quite a bit more stimulating to watch when you see them teeing it up at Riviera, for instance. I'd like to see an awful lot more of that. And I'm kind of one of the most, I don't really like the whole bifurcation stuff, but it's probably the only way we can get to see a professional tournament played at Cypress Point is if we start playing on limited distant balls. And, that's just one example, but you get where I'm going. It would probably bring a lot more into play on the Melbourne Sandbelt. You could probably look at some really cool courses in Japan. I'm going to throw it out there. Holland. I'd love to see more professional golf played in Holland. We all know how big of a, we all know that. But, do we see that's going to happen? I'm not so sure. No. And I think even if we did, I don't think it would force the lateral thinking and the scheduling. But I do think we are going to see more money flown into the top 50 in the world. We're probably going to see less into the feeder tours. I think it's going to become increasingly competitive. There's more people playing the game. There's more people, the standard's always drifting away. Difficult to answer, but I think we're all saying the same thing in what we want to see happen. I'm not certain that the PGA Tour will be as strong, Tom, in 5 or 10 years' time. I think you will start to see some of this splintering. Like, there's clearly going to be some momentum behind this Saudi Golf League, and the PGL is going to have some options there at its disposal.
I'm just wondering whether it'll be more sort of ad hoc things, people supplementing their salary with the match 2, the match 2000. It's like whether it's just picking up a few quid here and there, but ultimately their staples the PGA Tour. And it depends how much they can come out and bully people. My understanding of the Premier Golf League and the Saudi Golf League, whatever that's going to be called, is they won't have any impact on their ability to enter a major. And if that's true, then they are going to be empowered. If there is any way, shape, or form that the USGA or the PGA can control if they enter a certain major or not, then it's basically shut up shop, isn't it?
Yeah, but there's some real issues there, aren't there? Because the US Open and the Open are, as the name suggests, open to all. So as soon as you start then limiting that premise, it's opens all kind of real issues, political issues in the game. Yeah. Point you make there, Sam, about the format, I get it, but let's not forget when we were talking about the WGC, the Dell that Horschel won earlier in the year. I don't know whether modern golf is it's a kind of chicken and egg situation, but modern golf is probably even worse to watch in the match play format when you just boil it down to like a singles knockout and there's just one match out on the course and they take, a sort of glacial amount of time to play.
Yeah, no, I get that.
But if you had...
The Ryder Cup's brilliant, but like I don't know how beyond the team format, match play or that kind of thing is maybe a sort of antidote to the issues or the sort of lack of stimulation you get from just watching 72-hole stroke play week in, week out. I still think that's the most exciting form of the game. But like with the majors, etc.,
was a good example of incredible match play viewing last year, whenever it happened.
Yeah.
If you had a league system where everyone plays everybody, like you have in football or whatever, and they can play each other, and there's loads of matches on course, and they all mean something, and that continues all around wherever, you can make it sort of TV friendly. I don't propose to be suggesting that's what they do, but there are ways round it. Certainly, I think we've gone miles off track on this, but I think there is.
It's gone away from us.
This one's got away from us a little bit, but I think it has. There is ways around it. I think I'm with you in a bit, Sam. What I would go on to your 72-hole stroke play thing. What I think didn't really have a chance to get off the ground, I think, because of COVID, was the sixes. That had a few events and then is basically stopped in its tracks. I wonder whether if that was allowed to run out, play its course.
That was the sublime to the ridiculous, though. I think that's like
interesting to get new people into it, though. Like you say, cricket.
I just think even if they're 2-day events, or even if they're, I'm not looking for this is going to be radical, but I just think 4-day stroke play is just really hard to watch. Now,
I disagree, actually.
So you dial in on I don't know, even in the majors, I'll be honest, the Fridays are really hard to watch. They're trickier. Like Thursday, you got a bit of excitement. Friday's like, okay, it's going on. Saturday's moving day and Sunday's obviously the finish. I wouldn't say I'm glued to a professional event from start to finish. Like you just can't be. There's too much golf to watch. There's physically too much going on.
Yeah, there is. But that's why for the majors, I'm like, that is the pure format. And I know what you mean in that doing it for the, Kraft Nabisco Championship or the Sanderson Farms is like, I'm not going to tune in and watch this sort of Thursday, Friday. But again, I wonder whether, I know we've always joked about it, and I'm like, I don't really enjoy watching that much professional golf. Oh my God, the absolute irony of a guy then being part of a 3-man team and podding about golf. It's like, work that one out. But maybe it seems like we're kind of all on a similar wavelength there. And despite what we do, we'll tune in and dial in and, kind of turn over every stone when it comes to the majors and some of the other bigger events. But actually, the run-of-the-mill PGA Tour, European Tour event, even for sort of fanatics and people as passionate about the game as us, it's just not that interesting.
Can I ask a philosophical question?
You can't.
In tennis, they've got a fairly similar structure. They've got like 4 majors and then lots of events. How is it that in the men's game, certainly, and obviously when you think back to the Serena age, to the women's game as well, but in the men's game, if you think about the men's game, how sort of 3 guys have just dominated it, absolutely dominated it. They just won pretty much every major there was, and in golf, you just don't get that. Why don't the same people win every week?
Because it's just a completely different sport in terms of the margins of it are so small. I know they're small in every professional sport, but it's like when they were comparing Federer and Tiger when they were both sort of at the peak of their powers in the mid 2000s, sort of towards the end of the first decade, at least. Federer's beating one person every time, and okay, he does it through 5, 6, 7 rounds, however many there are. I've probably shown my complete ignorance as to the format of a major tennis tournament, but he's beating one person each time. Whereas in golf, and that's why stroke play is arguably the purest format, a professional's going to have to beat 120, 150 other competitors every time they tee it up. And when that's aggregated over 4 rounds, it's like that is just, you have to be so much better than everyone else just to
So you
win.
think it's a statistics
Just to
problem?
win like 5% of the time or whatever it is, or 1% of the time. It's like you have to be so much better than everyone else, and it's just the nature of the sport, really.
I actually
Interesting take.
agree with you that in the professional ranks that the 72 stroke play is the purest form. I think the purest form for the everyday player is match play, but I also think, Tom, there's more breadth in the game of golf, isn't there? Fundamentally, like the fine motor skills required for the disciplines that you've got within a game of golf, just from putting to teeing to iron play, and like you say, Bruce, the fact that you are essentially playing against a field of over 100 players rather than against one person in standalone fixtures. And also we know that racket sports also, it's harder to have that kind of on his weak type feeling within racket sports. Things like squash, a squash player will beat someone they're marginally better at 8 times out of 10. Golf just doesn't work like that. But it's fair observation. I think it's interesting where it'll go. And I think the only other bit, funny if we had a slightly ironic question for someone about cancel culture in golf, but I think there's a little bit of a watch out on that as well. And I think, I'd like to see the players, I'd like a bit more sort of authenticity from the players in general as well. And I think maybe some of these new tours might give that. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But, I think sometimes particularly, by and large, I think it can sometimes be a little bit sterile with the players in terms of getting the personalities through. That's where having them mic'd up on the course would have been so good. And it feels like that's just kind of naturally hit a roadblock now, and maybe that won't get past. But it would be nice to see a little bit more player interaction, I think, for the viewer. Just something to, and maybe this conversation is just a symptom of the fact that professional golf's just got a little bit dilute the last few weeks, and it's like there's not actually that much to sing about.
I think the PGA or the European Tour or the tours, they could have said to the players, there is no option. You will wear microphones, and that be that. And you could tune in and watch someone's round live, and you can listen and talk to their caddy, and as long as they're all in the same boat, they'd all get on board with it. But it's when it's saying to a group, do you fancy being mic'd up this week? They're like, no, not really. But if they came down and just mandated it and said, right, you're all doing it, or you can go do one and play on a different tour, they'd quickly get on board. And
again,
I'd be really compelled to watch that.
I don't know if it's just a bit gimmicky though. Call me a sort of traditionalist, but it's
conversations there.
Yeah, but you've always had little conversations in the past, that you pick up from a sort of microphone that's out in the fairway, or, if Feraghty's following along and he's got his microphone, you can pick up some background noise. I do wonder whether you can trivialize it a little bit and try to, yes, it is entertainment ultimately, like all these sportsmen, they're entertainers. That's why they're paid such huge amounts of money. But we do at least like to sort of believe in the kind of the idea of them as athletes trying their hardest. And if we're just, if we're trying to capture their every sort of thought or expression, I just don't know whether that it's just making it a bit sort of gimmicky, really.
Yeah, it's interesting how you look at it. I don't see it like that, but I do. As soon as you put the word gimmicky in around golf, for me, I'm running 1,000 miles, and I think that's and the thing is, once major broadcasters get hold of this and run with it for half an hour, like, it feels gimmicky, and I think that's one of the things that's, there's always a danger with that when they try and do some of this contrived stuff. That it comes across as gimmicky, doesn't it? So, and
it will be sponsored. It will be sponsored, won't you? So, obviously we've got Aon Risk Reward is already kind of, grated on us heavily, and a lot of other people fairly heavily.
Cisco would be a good sponsor for that.
But it's just, I don't know. Yeah, hopefully we've not come off this pod sounding too glum about the
Zoom
prospects.
would be a good one for that as well.
Zoom would be good. Yeah, but no, I think we are glum because I think actually the point, the way I see it is, it just feels like we're at a crossroads with it somehow. Maybe I'm overstating that. I don't know.
Well, I think the next few months, a year, are going to be really interesting to see what pans out. In a lot of ways, I'd like to see one of the alternate teams or whatever you're going to call them, the alternate sort of styles of play. I'd like to see them to have some level of success because, competition is brilliant. I'd like to see them have rival tours and they could go and choose what they want to do and see how that pans out. And I think it'll be a really interesting 6 months to a year now. But speaking of gimmicks, trying to keep this somewhat on track, what will be gimmicks from now on are green reading books.
Yeah, and that's just a no-brainer decision. I would expect us to be unanimous on this one.
Yeah, I'm happy that they've been outlawed. I think it's interesting that probably the world's foremost putting coach, Phil Kenyon, has just gone absolutely nuts that they've been outlawed. He put a post on Instagram just saying this is an absolute joke. It's not going to speed up play. Like, what is this all about? He kind of understands where it's going for, but I think he just, maybe quite rightly, it's an area of his expertise, and I think he would argue that there's definitely some skill to be used in the green reading books. But look, it's just without wanting to sound like a dinosaur. I think you guys are going to be of a similar view. It just, whenever you're really taken away from the traditions of the game and how it was played by some of the pioneers, and whenever you feel like you're just getting too far away from that, I think it's just time to sort of stop and reassess and maybe just go back to how things were, go back to a slightly simpler time.
Do you think young Tommy Morris drew a line around his ball for putting?
No, I don't think he did. But I do think that these things are all in increments, aren't they? So you don't go from, O.B. Keeler writing about Bobby Jones, 1930 or whatever, to the Aon risk reward overnight. These things happen in baby steps. And I agree. Like, you see some of these things that happen, and you look at maybe dare I say, without sounding too bitter about it, you look at the media landscape at times and you think it's just, we're running away from the traditions of the game. We are running away from some of the stuff that makes
golf. What are you
golf.
talking about, Sam?
Well, there's some, I think, look, you can have people are able to do what they want, but you see massive amounts of endorsement for stuff that I see as pretty base media coverage, and it's usually under the guise of growing the game rhetoric and stuff like that. But I agree with Bruce to a point. Like, it feels sometimes jarring, but it's really, you can never put the toothpaste back in the tube, can you? It's like once you've lost that bit of authenticity from the game, you can't get it back. And as much as we look for the Bellatas and the Persimmons and the, all that kind of stuff, we can't really go back there very quickly. So,
no,
I think you've got to be realistic with it. Yeah, I don't know. I like some of the traditions of the game, but it's how you're attracting a new group of people to golf in a way that doesn't look stuffy and look like the game's kind of straight out of the 1920s. Half the challenge.
I think. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I had a very interesting conversation down at Rye last weekend when I was playing in a foursomes match there with a couple of guys at the dinner table who talked about...
It's about the most elite golfing statement ever.
No, because I guess it's a traditional, it's a traditional place, and foursomes is a traditional format that the three of us all love. But, we had a conversation along these lines about two things, really. One was a comment as to why no golf ball manufacturer has made a ball with a GPS tracking device in it that prevents you from losing your ball. Because surely, with all the advances in TrackMan have just released a ball that allows you to, hit a ball into a screen indoors, into a simulator about a meter away, and still, give you full readings on it 350 yards away, and crazy technology like that. Why is it that no major manufacturer has been able to put a GPS in a ball that stops you from ever losing it? And another related question was, should we be able to, with the rules changes that came in 2019 and just sort of the general kind of way things have moved, should we be able to place the ball whenever it's on the fairway, basically avoiding the most annoying and one of the most kind of contentious points in the game around the rules, which is if you find a divot, should you be able to take it out the divot? And It's interesting because I think the three of us all kind of agreed that on the divot side of things, you should play the ball as it lies. That is the core principle of this game of golf, which is it's kind of a microcosm for life. You do get some really good luck and you get some really shit luck, and you can hit a great shot down the center of the fairway, find it in a divot, and you feel really hard done by. In the same way that you can hit a ball in the trees, it can ricochet out into the middle of the fairway and you have a perfect lie, or it can go deep into the bund and you never see it again. Or you might hit a half decent shot that you, for some reason or another, you never see again. It's like, I think ultimately what our sport is built on is like there's elements of luck, which go together with this mixture of skill that's required too. And it's sort of, it's a microcosm of life really. And we can never really sanitize it or sterilize it so much that we take out the kind of little bits of chance and good fortune that we need. And to me, like the green reading book, the idea that the skill of green reading is totally taken out of it by having a perfect sort of 3D map of the green that gives you all the breaks. It's just like, that really doesn't sit well with the spirit of things.
Number one, the reason they don't put a GPS in balls is because they charge £5 a golf ball.
That's the obvious one. Yeah, no, that's the obvious. That's the
Number
obvious answer.
two,
but actually, on that point, surely if someone came along with GPS and a ball, everyone would buy it and they'd make millions. So,
well, yeah,
Not
maybe.
one ball.
isn't that the principle of free market capitalism?
Number two, and this is going to be a straight lift from a previous guest of ours, which is Mike Clayton. But Mike Clayton would argue, and I've heard it, and I completely agree, that playing your ball out of a divot only benefits the better player over a long period of time, because everybody will eventually get in a divot or 2 divots or 10 divots or 100 divots over their lifetime, but only the better player can play out of them successfully. So actually, it shouldn't be the better players that are saying this is unfair, I can't play off the fairway. It's a skill that you need to learn in the game because you need to play the ball as it lies.
Well, I agree with you. You need to play the ball as it lies, but and again, it's just brilliant that you've gone back to your statistical persona, which always comes out in this pod. But it's like, maybe it averages out over time and everyone finds an equal number of divots. I mean, it doesn't. Some people are really lucky, some people are really unlucky, but it doesn't really help you if like you're playing in the biggest round of your life and you stripe one down the 72nd hole or the 18th hole and you find yourself in a divot.
I'll tell you what, if you were in the biggest hole of your life and you've got, let's call it the Open, and you walk down the Open on the 72nd hole and you're in a divot, you turn around to your players and go, this is so unfair. You'd look like a right dick. So just don't do it.
I feel like we might have digressed. There's a danger we might have digressed.
I can recover it. Richard Bland hit a 5-wood out of a divot on the 72nd hole at the Belfry.
Yes.
To claim his maiden maiden European Tour victory. We look forward to seeing it up next week. And over to you, Tom.
No, I think that was a really good one actually, because when he went up to that, he didn't drop his shoulders. He didn't sigh.
I think he might have done a little. Cool. We're gonna go out and play it. Are we going to address some of these questions that we've had sent in? Or there's a few quick fire ones. We've done a few of the hot ones. I did have a couple circled that I wanted to cover. One of our listeners, Dara Garahy, would very, very much like to know which course you've enjoyed filming this year, Tom, most.
That's an interesting one. You're going to have to help me, Sam. What have I filmed this year?
Cruden Bay.
Cruden Bay was good to film. Obviously the dunes and the light was amazing. Carnoustie was good to film. Royal County Down was pretty special to film.
Didn't have great weather though.
Well, we had some of the best weather you can get to film, because it was like we had quite bright light that was coming through. It wasn't sunshine, it was quite bright though. Really, really dark, moody sky, and the waves were crashing in, the mountains in the background. That is yet to be released, but there is stuff in the can about Royal County Down, and it's that's a place that really, really
in the game.
blew my socks off. So I'd say it's RCD. And by the way, if anyone was at the not closing party and picked up my Royal County Down top, obviously I know you did it by mistake, but could you please return it because that's still missing? Shameless plug. Carry on.
Okay.
Any more questions?
A couple. There's some I think we'll come back to in other pods, to be fair. But one's about current club membership and golf bubble and will it last? I feel like that's probably a separate pod discussion because I feel like that's fairly nuanced.
That could be a good one. That could be a good one.
So I will close, and I will also with this question, I'll also volunteer one that I thought was pretty good that we got on a poll recently, but which is the most obscure stash scene at any golf club we visited. Now, it's not one I've had firsthand. This one came in as response, but I thought an ice bucket from Shinnecock Hills was right up there as being one of the most niche pro shop purchases I have ever heard of. Bruce, Tom, go.
Well, have you got a short one, Bruce? Because my story's a little bit longer.
You go. It'll give me time to think.
Okay, well, here's what, when you get into the wokeries of the world that we live in, you start to seek out these logos and you think everything that you see means something. So when Sam and I were in Portrush, we went to the Harbour Bar and had a drink and we sat down, and this fairly big guy, clearly played rugby once upon a time, maybe still did, big dude, sits down across from us with this really niche, tiny little logo of a tree. We were all looking at him like, okay, it's not something that's
small.
It's not Cleve Hill. Okay, yeah, Christ, it's got to mean something. We're all talking to each other. I mean, literally, for an hour, it's all we talked about was what logo this guy was wearing. He must be gone forever. It completely dominated our chat in the Harbour Bar for an hour until one of us, and I can't remember who, just leaned over, like just as the guy was leaving, saying, "Mate, this is killing me. I have to know what logo that is." And he goes, "Oh, it's just the make of the shirt. I don't know. It's just a brand."
Yes.
And he walked out and we're like, "Oh, that's really disappointing."
So we did have one volunteered with this question as a start of a 10. I think it's going to take some beating, but Baby Bibs from Merion was cited.
I mean, yeah.
Dog collars from Portrush.
I mean, I think that's pretty niche for sure.
I like the dog collar one though. That makes sense because obviously the sort of Peter Millar belts. There's a very clear aesthetic to the golf belts, I think, right now, and I can see how the dog collar sort of fits in with that.
I've heard Fan Court do a range of chopping boards.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few. I think there's a few.
You got your plastic cup from Valderrama?
Yeah, I have. Well, that's actually not in the pro shop. That was stolen straight out the buggy, to be fair. But let's not dwell on that one.
Certainly, some food for thought, really. In terms of, we'd have to. I think the objective is going to be, for anyone who listens to the podcast, is to contact us with the nichest pro shop material you can find, and with a picture. That would be great, and something we can gram. But actually, considering Bruce starts before we pod, in our little preamble, Bruce starts every podcast with, "Right, boys, short and sharp. Yeah, 20 minutes. That's enough, isn't it?" So I think
that's so much VAT you've added on that.
You might have gone over our quota. So I think on that point, it's been a pleasure talking to you this evening, gentlemen. And until next time,
whenever that may be,
we'll probably have a bit of excitement from DP, won't we? I think that will be that'll be a good event.
So until next time,
all the best.
Adios.
Watch this.